Welcome back to another one of my videos. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Lotta, and today I'm going to show you how to make this blueberry peach layered cake. Now this cake is made up of a super fluffy vanilla sponge cake that is layered with a blueberry cream cheese filling as well as a peach filling. So if you want to see how to make this cake, keep watching the video and let's get right into it. Now the first thing we need to make is our sponge cake so we can get that cooled off. So like always, we're going to be using 4 room temperature eggs, 125 grams of sugar with a pinch of salt, 1 good splash of vanilla extract, 125 grams of flour, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now feel free to add anything else to our base sponge cake recipe, like some lemon zest, some ground almonds, or you can also fold in some blueberries to add a little bit more blueberry flavor if you want to. I'm personally going to keep it just like this because I think our fillings are going to speak for themselves and it's going to be enough flavor already there. So I'm going to keep my sponge cake pretty basic, but again, you can do whatever you want to do. Now, like always with our sponge cake, we're going to start by letting our eggs, sugar, salt, and vanilla whisk until it's super light and fluffy and doubled in size before carefully sieving in our dry ingredients. And once again, there is already a video on my channel where I go into a lot more detail on how I make my sponge cake. So if you want to see that, it is linked up there as well for your reference. Our sponge cake can now wander into the oven that's been preheated to 360 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius, and it's going to bake for about 25 to 30 minutes. Bye-bye, cake. Now while the cake is baking in the oven, we might as well already start with our peach filling. Now I already went ahead and drained off 1 big can of peaches, so I'm left with about 300 milliliters of the concentrate, and I'm gonna say maybe 500-ish milliliters or grams of the actual fruit. Now we're also going to need 20 grams of powdered sugar, the juice of half a lemon, 50 grams of cornstarch, and 50 grams of butter. Now you can adjust the amount of sugar that you use. Since I'm using canned peaches, I find that they're already quite sweet, so I only want to use about 20 grams of sugar. But again, if you're using frozen peaches or fresh peaches, the sweetness might vary. So just adjust the sugar to taste and however sweet you like it. Now the first thing I'm going to do is puree my peaches until I have a nice peach puree. So I'm left with exactly 500 milliliters of my peaches. But I'm going to save my fruit concentrate because I'm going to use it for our sponge cake to add a little bit more moisture to our cake layers. Again, if you don't have this, don't worry about it. You can skip that part. But if you do have it, you might as well use it and not waste it. That's the sponge cake. Now our filling's gonna come together really quickly here as well. So all we're going to do is add everything into a pot and bring it up to a boil. Now before I add my cornstarch to the rest of my ingredients, I'm just going to dissolve it with a little splash of water. And that's just gonna help make sure that there's no lumps of cornstarch in our filling. Now that the cornstarch is nice and dissolved, I can just go ahead and add it into my peach mixture. Now as it comes up to a boil, our cornstarch is going to help thicken up our filling so that we have a nice thick filling that's not going to leak out of our cake. And once that has happened, we're going to take it off the heat and carefully whisk in our butter. Now the butter is going to help thicken up our filling as well, and it's also going to add a little bit more flavor. Now I let my peach mixture boil for about 3 minutes just to make sure that it was really nice and thick and that it was actually going to hold its shape when we fill our cake. Now at this point, I'm just going to carefully whisk in my butter And then we're going to transfer this into a bowl and cover it with plastic wrap to make sure that there's no film that builds on the very top. Our peach filling needs to completely cool off, so we're going to set this aside for now and we can move on to our blueberry cream cheese filling. Now the first thing we need to do for our blueberry cream cheese filling is reduce our blueberries. So to do that, I'm going to be using 200 grams of Canadian wild blueberries, not sponsored by President's Choice, but if you do want to sponsor me, feel free to. I'm very open to sponsors. And I also don't know if these are actual Canadian wild blueberries, but we're going to pretend like they are. And if they're just normal blueberries, that's okay too. We're also going to be needing the juice of half a lemon, and I'm also going to be adding 20 grams of sugar just to sweeten it up a little bit. And it's also going to create kind of like a jam-like consistency as it reduces. But yeah, feel free to adjust the amount of sugar and lemon depending on what kind of blueberries you have and how sweet they are and how sweet you want your filling to be. Now essentially all we're going to do is add everything into our pot and bring that up to a boil. Now once my blueberries have softened a little bit, I'm going to puree them. Now again, you can skip that if you're okay with having more of the blueberry skin and a little bit more chunks in your cream cheese filling. I want it to be as smooth as possible, so I'm going to puree it and then we're going to keep cooking it until it's nice and cooked down and we have a nice thick blueberry jam-like consistency. Now as you can see on my spatula, there's a little bit of blueberry chunks or blueberry skin still in my filling. If you don't want those, feel free to sieve your filling before bringing it back up to a boil and letting it reduce. And that's just going to make it a little bit more unison and it's not going to be so chunky. And your finished filling is going to have a really nice, beautiful color without any of the blueberry pieces showing in your filling. Now at this point, we just need to be a little bit patient and let this come back up to a boil. And once it's boiling, we can lower the heat to medium or low and just let it simmer for about 5 or 10 minutes until the extra moisture has evaporated and we're left with a nice thick blueberry jam-like consistency. Now from our 200 grams of wild blueberries, we are now left with this little bit of thick blueberry compote. So at this point, we're also going to let this cool off. Now I'm also going to transfer just about a teaspoon of this into a separate container, maybe a tiny bit more like that. Now I'm setting aside about a teaspoon of my blueberry mixture just because I want to do a little bit of decorating on the outside of my cake and I want a few different shades of my purpley blue blueberry cream cheese mixture. So I'm setting a little bit aside so I can get a couple different color variations going. But again, you don't have to do this. But if you want to do a little bit of decorating, feel free to set a little bit aside just in case. Now for the actual cream cheese filling, you're going to need 500 grams of room temperature cream cheese, 50 grams of powdered sugar, a good splash of vanilla extract, and 400 milliliters of heavy whipping cream. Now it is important that your cream cheese is at room temperature. That's just going to help make sure that your filling isn't going to be grainy from the cream cheese and it's going to be really nice and smooth, which is obviously what you want. Now if your cream cheese is fresh out of the fridge, you can always microwave it for about 15-second intervals, whisk it up, and if it's still a little bit grainy, pop it back into the microwave for another 15 seconds to smooth it out. Again, that's just going to help make a really nice, smooth, creamy filling, which is what we want. So we're going to start by whisking together our cream cheese, vanilla, and sugar until that is a little bit fluffy and mixed in. And in a separate container, we're going to also whip up our cream until we have some nice stiff peaks. Now that our whipped cream is pretty much at stiff peaks, I'm going to go ahead and gradually add my cream cheese mixture and get that nice and mixed in. Now I'm also going to set aside a little bit of this filling before I add my blueberries, and that way I have a little bit of frosting to do a little bit of decorating on top as well and have a few different colors going. Like that. Now the last thing we're going to do with our filling is quickly whisk in our cooled off thickened blueberries, and that's about it. Now at this point you can also see that my blueberry filling has a couple specks of my blueberry skin in it. Again, I'm okay with this. If you would prefer it all to be this gorgeous purpley color without any blueberry skin in it, just remember to sieve your blueberries before you reduce them. So that's it for our filling. Once again, you can give this a taste and see if you need to add any more sugar, vanilla, or lemon, or anything else. And once you're happy with it, we're just gonna put it into the fridge and we're gonna wait until we're ready for layering. Now at this point we can also get to layering. So I already went ahead and cut my cooled off sponge cake into 3 even-ish layers. I also transferred my 2 fillings into some piping bags with just a round piping tip. Now I made sure to not overfill my piping bag so that it doesn't create a huge mess. And I just have my extra fillings in the fridge and on the counter so that I can just refill my piping bags as needed. And lastly, I'm also going to be using some of that leftover fruit concentrate from my canned peaches to just add a little bit of extra moisture to my sponge cake. Now, I'm also using one of these cake discs that is ever so slightly larger than my sponge cake. And that's just going to make the crumb coat go really fast, and it's going to be relatively even. And to make sure that this doesn't fall off of my cake stand, I'm just using a wet paper towel to keep it in place. You can also just use a wet cloth as well. And if you don't have any of these things, that's totally okay as well. I'm sure you'll still succeed. That being said, to layer, we're going to start with a layer of our sponge cake, drizzle on a little bit of our fruit concentrate, and then add a very thin layer of our blueberry cream cheese filling and smooth that down. And from there, we're going to pipe on 3 borders of our blueberry cream cheese filling. And in the gaps, we're going to fill it with our peach filling. And we're going to repeat that for both of our layers. And then we're going to crumb coat with the leftover blueberry cream cheese filling. Now I also ended up using only about half of my peach filling, so you can also feel free to just half the recipe that's in the video. But again, if you're okay with having some left over that you can add into your yogurt or into other cakes, or eat it over ice cream, or eat it just by the spoonful, you can just make the whole batch as well. And it also depends on how much filling you put into your cake. I obviously didn't put as much filling as I do in some other cakes, since I did multiple rings of the cream cheese mixture as well as my peach filling. But if you just put the peach filling in the inside, I think the whole batch is best. But again, if you're using a little bit more of your cream cheese filling, like I did in this video, you might only need about half of your peach filling. Now that our cake is crumb coated, we're going to put it into the fridge to set for at least an hour or 2 before we do any decorating. Now I don't have time to finish decorating the cake today, so I'm just going to leave this in the fridge overnight, and then we'll decorate it and cut into it tomorrow. As you can see, it's the next day, so our cake has been in the fridge overnight, so let's grab it out and finish decorating it. Now I already went ahead and prepped the decor that I want to use. So I've got some fresh peaches that I've sliced up, as well as some blueberries, and I've also got my cream cheese filling that we've set aside from yesterday. So I've got a little bit of my white one that we set aside, and then some of my leftover blueberry one. And I also went ahead and added a little bit more of my blueberry reduction, just to get it a little bit of a darker shade of purple. And I've also got a little bit of my peach filling left here as well. Not sure if I'm gonna use it, but we'll figure it out. Now, at first I was thinking of doing kind of like a multicolored purple vibe, kind of like I did in the wedding cake that I made, where it was like a little bit abstract-y, and I just kind of had a bunch of different colors and shades kind of going together. But I figured that would be a little bit too much on this cake, so I think I'm just gonna do a little bit of piping on top and then fill it in with some of the fresh fruit. We'll see what happens. Now I put the cake in the fridge for about 10 minutes or so, just to let my cream cheese filling set a little bit so it wasn't as smooth. So now what I want to do is, with my white dollops here, I want to kind of hollow them out a little bit to create a little bit of a center where I want to add my leftover peach filling, as well as the leftover thickened raspberry mixture that we've got. Now, I've seen people online just use like a measuring spoon and kind of hollow it out that way. I have no idea if it's just going to stick to it. So I've got a couple different tools. I've also got my little spatula here, as well as just like a spoon. So we'll see if it works, but ideally we just want to create like a little bit of like a divot that we can fill with our two fillings. I don't know if it's going to work. I also don't know if the filling has set enough, if it's like thick enough. We'll see if it works. Worst case scenario, we're going to ruin the cake. Now I ended up getting small divots in there. I feel like it would definitely be a lot easier if I let my cake chill a little bit longer to let the cream cheese filling really get nice and thick. The same goes with buttercream. If you used buttercream instead, I'm sure it would be so much easier to get those little divots in there, especially if you have like a small little measuring spoon to just kind of like press into it. But again, I'm impatient and I kind of just wanted this cake to be done. So at this point, we're just gonna fill our little divots with our peach filling, as well as our little leftover of our blueberry jam-like reduction that we made. Now the real question is, do I add a little bit of something along the bottom, like a little bit more piping, a little bit more fruit? Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. No, yes, no. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And there's our finished blueberry cream cheese peach cake. So that's going to be everything for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up or write me a comment down below. And as always, the whole recipe is going to be in the description box as well. And I'll see you next week with another recipe.